Hi, I'm Richard McFarland, President of the SCB, and I'm pleased to have a few minutes to discuss the Standards Coordinating Body on behalf of the entire board and staff of the SCB. I'm an immunopathologist by training, and I spent about 17 years in FDA working on regulation, policy of regenerative medicine products and policy of regenerative medicine products across the government. I'm currently also the Chief Regulatory Officer of BioFab USA, a Manufacturing USA institute that is focused on advancing the manufacturing of engineered tissues and organs. So you might ask, why do I think it's important that I spend significant effort with SCB? Because I believe in its mission. SCB's mission is really to coordinate the accelerated advancement and improved awareness of standards and best practices that address the rapidly evolving needs of the global regenerative medicine advanced therapy community. It does that by engaging the broader community in the identification of needed standards, prioritization, and advancement of those standards, coordinating and communicating about standards activities across the entire community, and educating the community about the available standards and how they can be implemented. Because regenerative medicine is such a nascent field, in spite of what the interest in this MESA meeting might suggest, it may not be clear to you all what the importance of standards is. So let me take a second to talk about two existing industries, established industries, where standards were key in their early days. First was the railroads. Without standardization of the width of the track, that is the gauge in railroads, the width between the rails, railroads couldn't communicate. There were lots of different railroads. You couldn't move engines and cars back and forth. Without that, railroads couldn't have led to industrialization, the westward expansion of the United States in the 19th century. The other is the microelectronics industry. Without early getting together to standardize the chip fabrication techniques, analysis methods of quality testing, our modern laptops and cell phones that we rely on couldn't exist. Regenerative medicine is at that early stage where pre-competitive sharing and collaboration and knowledge sharing can really speed the field, reduce the cost of our products, both to the manufacturers and to the patients, facilitate innovation and product development, bring support and comfort to the public about the effectiveness of our therapies, and accelerate regulatory review. These are all benefits that standards can bring the regenerative medicine field. What would happen without SCB, and why is SCB important to your individual organization? So standards that would be helpful for the field will be slowed or not developed. Standards development that will happen may happen without input from your particular organization, so you may not have a voice. There are going to be increased difficulty in getting involved in standards. Individual standards development can be somewhat difficult to understand for those who aren't enmeshed in it, and the progress could slow. That is really what SCB can do for the organization. Let's look at what SCB does if we look at a lifespan of a standard. So in this slide, we're looking with upstream being when there's really a vague notion that there may be a need for a standard. Through the crystallization of the standard, and so it can be prioritized, this need can be prioritized and moved into existing standards development organization and developed. And then what we're calling downstream here, where education needs to take place on the standards out into the field. As you can see, the real through line through this whole process is the SCB, communicating across with standards development organizations and with the regenerative medicine community across this entire continuum of the lifespan, from an idea to its widespread adoption. So it might be good to take a good time to answer the question, organizationally, how can SCB do this? And how does it achieve its three missions of coordination, engagement, and education? So SCB really arose from an early effort in the Alliance for Regenerative Medicine in its Standards and Technology Committee that was in a response to something they were hearing from regulators, that one of the things a community could do to move things forward was to work on standards. It became evident by January of 2017 that the best way for the community to move forward was to take this nucleus of an idea that happened at the very beginning of ARM and establish an independent organization, the Standards Coordinating Body, as a 501c3 nonprofit, which occupies this unique niche within the field because we have no vested interest in specific scientific, commercial, clinical, or policy approaches. And we're not an SDO. We really coordinate efforts across the field and communicate between the SDOs, the field, in the broadest possible way to move it forward. No other group really fills this niche and can really be an honest broker to move standards development forward. Looking at it another way, sort of orthogonally to the graph of the lifespan of the standard, if you look here across the regenerative medicine stakeholders and subject matter expertise groups that work together, government agencies, regulators, sure. National standards setting agencies, yes. Funders, yes. And funders of research, development, and funders of patient care. Clinicians, pharmacopoeias, which have their unique country-specific or region-specific way that they interact with the entire ecosystem. Academics, consultants, those individuals who may not be at an individual development project, but have seen things across the entire field. Biomanufacturing institutes, such as Nimble, CCRM in Canada, BioFab, and Catapult, who have in their missions moving the field forward. Industry from small academic spinouts to large multinational companies. And patient advocates. Patient advocates are extremely important because within this entire community, they bring us back to what we really are all looking for, which is moving the field forward to develop helpful therapies for those who need it. SCB guides these subject matter experts through the standards development process, or serve as catalysts or translators of the process, so that this essential expertise that we have can be expressed, but without having to have the burden of learning all the details of the standards of each standards development organization. And at the end, what you get is accelerated standards development for the entire field. This very busy graph I want to take you through for a minute. On the horizontal axis, you see our upstream development and outreach, just similarly as we saw in the development of the lifespan of a standard slides a few slides ago. On the vertical axis, you'll see a listing of the standards under development that SCB is currently very actively involved in. And you'll see that it spans cell therapy, gene therapy, tissue engineered medical products, and standards are specific for each of those sectors, as well as standards that cross these sectors. The bulk of the graph here is segmented into three sections that start in 2009 and end in 2025. There's the pre-SCB era, prior to 2017 when SCB was initiated, the SCB era going up to the present, and what we project for the near future. And as you can see, these waypoints on each individual standard, there's a lot of distance between the waypoints in the pre-SCB era. That's not to say that the individuals that were working on the standards at that time weren't working hard and doing good work, but they didn't have the catalyst. And if you look at the SCB era, what you'll see is the waypoints are stacking up on each other. And it's a graphical representation of the speed and the benefit that SCB brings to the community. SCB has also published a couple of landscape reports that are living documents that will continue to be updated. The regenerative medicine standards landscape really was a groundbreaking report when it was first published in 2017, in late 2017, because it was the first time that anyone had gone across the entire regenerative medicine landscape and looked at standards that could be used to develop regenerative medicine products. And in addition to laying that out, it certainly identified gaps, places that we should work on developing standards, opportunities to do that. That led to the needed standards report about 1.5 years later to formalize those gaps. But that shows what are those gaps, how do those prioritize, what we should work on next. And those are certainly tells SCB and the community what we'll be working on in the next year or 2 or 3. And as I said, these reports are updated on a regular basis. Now, this is a smattering of the ongoing and upcoming activities and opportunities for you to get involved in SCB activities, because I hope by now I've answered the question of why I think this mission is important, why I think SCB is really important for regenerative medicine as a field. You know, we do pre-conference workshops and an annual meeting where we talk about what has happened in the last year, what have we identified as new gaps, how priorities have changed, how we're going to move forward, as well as many additional detailed efforts on individual standards all the time. There's always a time, an opportunity to get involved. And as I said before, as our setting as a 501c3, we intentionally are an honest broker, and part of that is limiting the activation that it needs to be to get involved, although there are always opportunities for financial sponsorship in broad-based activities that we're working on across the sectors. So I want to thank you for spending a little time with me, listening and learning about the SCB. There's a lot more information on our website, and an email to admin@regenmedscb will get a quick response. I look forward to seeing a lot of you in the partnering sessions and hopefully in person in 2021. Thank you very much.